on Simplex
Hello.
and TMTVL, also known as Tim.
Hello.
So this is a kind of an unusual episode because this time all of the co-hosts are Europeans. I'm the only one from the United States. I think all the other ones have been guys from the States. But so this is the international European edition of the Remembering Shamus podcast. And it was kind of interesting because I think a pretty large fraction of Shamus's audience was from Europe, if I remember correctly.
Oh, really?
That's very possible.
Because when we post the diecast, we'd always post it at 3 a.m. his time because that would go up at like noon or whatever in Europe. And that's when he got the most traffic because a lot of Europeans would be tuning in to listen to it, first thing.
Yeah, I remember being surprised seeing it posted so early, knowing you guys were American.
Yeah. It was intentionally so that it would go up the day of in Europe instead of it being like, if we posted a normal time in the US, it's like, after hours in Europe and people wouldn't watch it. She was also kind of weirdly aware that a lot of people listened to his or consumed his content during work hours. Like they'd, get to work, have some coffee, get started on their thing, finish their inbox and then want to take a quick break. And so they'd go and read his article for the day or, listen to the podcast or something while they're supposedly working. And so he was like, I don't know how I feel about that, but I understand that people want to do that. So, he accommodated it.
I used to download the ARC version and then put it on my MP3 player and listen to it while working.
Oh yeah, right. I would do that too. I would get like I'd also like play the videos so you guys got your stream time, but I'd download them and listen to them on for my walks as well.
Because of the caching system that he used like a distributed caching so that his site wouldn't get DDoSed basically by people coming to visit it. But because of that, he didn't really have any good statistics on how many people were actually like listening to the podcast or reading the articles and stuff. So it was kind of like a rough 10-1, like 10 times the number of comments were approximately the number of people who would engage with it, who'd like listen to it or whatever. But he never really knew for sure, and he didn't really know what the fraction is, between Europe and the U.S. and maybe other places. I don't know. It didn't seem like there was much of an Eastern Asian following, but there could have been.
Yep.
So what brought you guys to the site? Well, let's just go down the line here. Andrew, what brought you to Shamus's site? What got you interested in his work?
I've forgotten exactly what the first post that I read of Shamus was. But I only discovered his site, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, so I'm a newbie.
Okay.
But I went on quite the reading binge when I did discover the website, so that's why it all blurs together for me. I'm just going to assume the Mass Effect retrospective was, among the first at least, because that was like one of the most compelling reads to me. Especially someone like who played the Mass Effect games a lot and like was very disheartened after the first game and then continually disappointed.
Yeah.
Even though there were still things I liked, but it was really eye-opening and cathartic to read Shamus's posts about it. Like he went the extra mile because he basically turned it into a book. So it was quite a lot of thought and effort and very rewarding to me in other ways. Like I don't even know if I'd now, like if I went back and read it, if I would like fully agree with him, but like I'm still impressed by like how well formed his thoughts were and like how succinctly he expressed things like and so well about not just the game, but like just like concepts to do with storytelling and video games and other things. It's like very fascinating and educational, I thought. So, and that got me so that's what I think got me acquainted with him and got me to really admire him and his work. And it gave me a good like a strong impression of him, that he had like this really like um I'm not familiar with like a lot of people that have like as good of a lattice work of mental models in their head as he seemed to.
Right.
So that was like particularly a compelling factor about what kept me reading his work, and then got into like going back on all of his old stuff, like listening to the spoiler warning podcasts, like when they go through like, or the let's plays, and then obviously the diecast. And at some point I mustered up the will to send in my own questions to the diecasts, um, in part because I listened to episodes and there'd go by mailbags and there'd be no questions, and I felt like I needed to fill a void. But like mostly because I was like very interested in getting both of your thoughts, um, both the host's thoughts on whatever like related to video games mainly, but because uh, Shamus just like stimulated my curiosity in a way that like not I don't think I had really gotten for a long time up until then.
Mm. Yeah, he was a
Um,
uniquely skilled in many different areas, but also cogent enough to make them understandable. He was interested in didactics, right? He was interested in teaching people, and so he was cogent enough to be able to distill the ideas for a way that people who weren't experts in the field would understand. It was a great thing.
yeah, that was where it was like I think he was a very like a very important good model to me when I discovered him, because I didn't really have many good models, or I don't know if I had any good models up until then.
Mm.
So, and yeah, I've gotten a few more since then, like Dr. K's the most recent one.
Mm.
But and those are like very different realms. Like one's to do with blogging video games and stories, and then the others in the medical field. But um, I think one of the things that surprised me, given Seamus's um, affability, like he was very friendly. He seemed to be in his how he wrote and how he spoke,
Mm.
and very like kind of affable, even though he was introverted.
Right.
Um, and so like there was a lot of relatability there, but like also kind of like inspiration, because I wouldn't, I'd have, I think, more anxiety about like speaking the way than he seemed to.
Mm.
Um, but you can tell me more if like you knew about any of that. Sorry if I'm rambling.
No, it's yeah. He had a very welcoming attitude, but also he was principled, right? He wasn't just like, oh, however I feel and however my guests feel or whatever. Like whoever posts a comment or something, it's just whatever is fine. He was like he had principles about things, like we're not going to talk about religion and politics. We're going to be respectful to each other. We're going to stay on topic to a certain degree, and all these kind of things. We care about story and about consistency, and about the gameplay being related to these things, and about the world feeling believable, right? And
Yeah.
kind of like trustworthiness, I guess. He really cared about himself being trustworthy, and also the media that he was engaged with being trustworthy, right?
Yeah. He had a bunch of posts that dabbled in, was it pungentry? Like, so he wouldn't just be talking about the video games. He would also be
Mm.
talking about like a lot of like marketing focused stuff, and trying to explain a lot of like business concepts, and not understanding how things were going in the video game side of things for that a bunch of
Yeah.
times, or like, would understand, but then like there'd be a lot of like adversities and difficulties. And that was really what was interesting about him, was he didn't seem to have like this one-dimensional view of like video games or video game business. He tried to see things from as many angles as he could, it seemed, and I think he did it uh, really excellently for the most part, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. One of the few that seem to be aiming toward that, as opposed to
so
just uh, commenting on the games themselves, or doing demagoguery stuff.
Yeah. I think the final thing I'll say for my introduction is that I unfortunately never got to speak with Shamus. The only engagement I really had with him was like, through the mailbag, and maybe like I think he might have replied to like one of my comments on his blog, and I didn't comment that often because I was mostly a lurker on his site. And it wasn't until around he was doing his his Deus Ex reboot project outline that I got really stimulated, because it was like, oh my god, creative writing. He's like, this is one of my favorite things about like a lot of his other posts, where he was like critical of Mass Effect and critical of these other games. He'd have little sections where he'd actually go how I do it, right? And he'd have this, and he'd say he only came, in some of these he'd be like, it took me like 5 to 10 minutes to come up with that, and I'd be like, that's amazing.
Right.
It's like so simple, but I can believe you did it in 5 to 10 minutes because of your track record. But like, that's still like really funny and amazing that like you came up with something so much better that quick.
Right.
And then like he finally dedicates himself to this long project. I assume out of love and like maybe frustration with like the later games. And just and maybe also like somewhat of a starvation for that kind of a game that wasn't coming out anymore, or there was very few of them coming out. And so yeah, I got more active in those posts, and I was eager to build off of his ideas and share my own with him. And then he passed, and it was the first time I'd ever felt a connection like that just be like so abruptly severed. And I still don't think I've like really truly processed the whole thing.
Yeah. It was it's a very hard parting.
Yeah. I think that's enough of me talking for now.
Okay. Well, how about you, Simplex? What brought you to the site? What brought you to be interested in Shamus's work?
I actually thought about that before. So I think, I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago. It was like 20 years ago. Maybe not maybe 20, but like 18. Anyway,
sure.
I think I was reading something about the third part of Thief. What was the name? Deadly Shadows.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I came across someone recommending an article about Shale Breach Cradle, right? This level. It's a famous level. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah.
It's a very famous level, like a horror level. There are enemies that look similar to Jacob's Ladder, like the characters from Jacob's Ladder, which I never saw. So I'm just speaking of what I read, and I think somehow Shamus had an article about Shale Breach Cradle, and that's how I realized he exists. And then on and off, I was reading his blog. I may have stopped, doing it for some years, because I noticed I have like huge gaps of articles I've never read. But at one point I started reading him very regularly. And I have a funny story, because the previous speaker said, sorry, I forgot your name, excuse me, that he never met Shamus, like spoke to Shamus, and actually spoke to Shamus in Left 4 Dead of all places, because at one point there would be some kind of like group sessions of playing Left 4 Dead. I think Shamus was an avid Left 4 Dead player at one point, and they played on the highest difficulty, and I went to play like I was a complete noob, and there was friendly fire, and I shot someone and killed him. And I was like, I felt so bad, and Shamus told me, don't worry about it, like, yeah, but Shamus was like totally cool. He's like, don't worry about it, dude, like, it's all fine, And then I thought, well, Shamus is a really cool guy, like. So that was the only like time I ever like met Shamus. It was in Left 4 Dead.
Wow.
A match in a co-op match in the hospital level. I remember this.
There we go.
So well, yeah, it was like, but it must have been like 15 years ago. I don't know. And I'm also a huge fan of immersive sims. So Thief, System Shock. I read the novel. I just checked the name and I forgot it already. What was the
Free Radical?
Free Radical. Yeah, I read that. Loved it. I actually never played the first System Shock, but I plan to play the remake. And yeah, I love I love Deus Ex, Thief, all those games. So I love reading Shamus' take on it, and all his critique, all his critique of the games, his Evil CEO articles. I
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
experienced points. Always read it because he would comment on the like topical events in the gaming industry. So that was very interesting. I loved reading that. I liked his comic. I mean, the DM of the Rings, and then there was this another comic, right? I forgot the name of that comic, but it was on the Escapist. He also had this comic there.
Yeah,
Pixel something?
Broken Pixels,
Yeah, I
Pixel
guess.
City
Yeah.
or something.
Broken Pixels, I think. Broken Pixels, yeah.
Stolen Pixels.
Stolen Pixels. There you go.
Stolen, okay. Stolen Pixels.
Yeah, and
So,
he also wrote Chainmail Bikini, which is like a standalone webcomic that was all illustrated and stuff.
Okay. I read about it, but I thought it was somehow inspired by DM of the Rings, but I didn't know that Shamus like wrote it.
I think he was an author on
Okay.
that.
That's cool. Maybe I'll go back to
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and that was mostly it. I very rarely commented. I mostly lurked. However, I'm a huge enthusiast of virtual reality. So at one point, I know that Seamus started to get a bit interested in that because I think one of his kids bought a headset. So I commented a bit there, like tried to explain something or like give some advice, and I was hoping that Seamus would get into VR because I thought it would be something that he would enjoy, and he was working on Active Worlds, right, so many years ago, which
Yeah.
is like the very proto VR, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious, like if he would get interested in VR. I like VR as an introvert. Is that you can just like shut yourself off, from the world. You put on the headset and you just, people don't bother you because you don't hear them and they don't see them. So that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, we don't need VR to do that.
true, but like it enhances the effect. I
Doesn't
guess.
hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I even found some of his articles about like virtual reality. He even had like very old. He had like an article. He had like some kind of article about VR even in 2014 when it was still like a very early, like it was like a development kit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think he got Dev Kit 1 for the Oculus.
Okay. Yeah. So he had an experience points article just how good is the Oculus Rift, and also I think you discussed in one of the diecasts 320. It has VR in the title.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that Isaac got the Quest 2, so like this most popular headset from Facebook, or
Right.
like, now known as Meta, and yeah, so that was also something interesting. I was interested. I was curious if Seamus would get more into VR or not. So that was
Right.
Like,
I think the reason he
the
reason he didn't was because his workflow was to have like a game on one screen and then the other screen had all his like notes and screenshots and stuff, and so he would be switching back and forth all the time. And with the VR, it's very immersive, like you were saying, but also like that immersion prevented him from like taking notes and stuff. So he didn't feel like he was generating content when he was using VR because he couldn't like integrate it into his site, right? It's hard to take screenshots and stuff in VR because it's in 3D and you have to get like mono view or one eye or whatever. And so it was like he felt obstructed from it. It was the same thing. He got a really nice camera. He was going to do live streaming, but he couldn't effectively communicate and play the game at the same time. Like his brain didn't work that way. And so he felt like he would stop playing the game and like talk to the camera, and then he's like, oh, I got to get back to playing the game. So then he would like stop talking to people and like just play the game for a while. And so the same thing, like he had a workflow that really clicked for him. But then like anything outside that workflow was just like, sorry guys, I can't handle this,
Yeah, I remember he did a live stream for Mass Effect Andromeda, didn't he?
Okay.
Yeah, he did a few of them. They're up on YouTube still, I think.
I was wondering after that one why there was no like follow-up to it, and now I know.
Yeah, it didn't work with his workflow. But I would have liked to see some more VR stuff too, because it he cared about performance so much and like engine programming. Like he had the ability to do the engine programming, and so it would have been really neat to see him like get into that and like do the integrated stuff with like performance optimization for VR and things. And I think he even did he do some VR stuff for Project Frontier? I seem to recall he did. Anyway,
I don't remember.
yeah.
And also there was this dumb industry, which I also liked.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Tim? What drew you to Shamus's site?
Yeah, I have also been reading the blog on and off since like 12 years ago, and like Simplex, I first started with Stolen Pixels a bit on The Escapist. I believe I started with that after Yahtzee recommended it in one of his videos.
Mm.
And then I read it on and off for a while, and after Spoiler Warning started, and that was back when it was on Blip, I started following the blog more regularly, and after several years I also started commenting a bit, but it's difficult for me to find out when exactly, because I believe I used a different username back then.
Mm.
But yeah, it's been a long while, and what first drew me in was the Spoiler Warning stuff, because I used to really dig Let's Play material back then, because it was, easy to, instead of playing a video game, to watch someone else play it.
Right.
Because that took a lot less time. But after a while, I started reading the other material as well, and then also went back and read for the backlog from the very early material when he was talking about the D&D campaign, I believe it was, that he did with his friends.
Yeah.
That he posted about when he first started the blog, and I read pretty much all of the backlog. But I know it's not very nice to speak ill of the dead, but I would consider Shamus to be a bit of a thief, because he stole like thousands of hours from me by letting me experience just a lot of material that I would not be very interested in myself. Like, for example, I read his articles about Borderlands, and I've tried playing that game a bit, but it's really not my thing. But reading Shamus talk about it was quite interesting. Something else that I recall was at one of the diecasts, he mentioned it was still back when he was doing those with the Spoiler Warning crew, and they had a diecast where they had no mailbag, and then I decided, like, I'm gonna try and write in every week, so they always have at least something to talk about.
Ah, there we go.
But that didn't really work every week for me. Also, I imagine that sometimes some mail got lost in the spam box. But I've been reading the blog and listening to the diecast and watching the videos for well over a decade by now, and I always imagined that it would keep going for like I don't know, until Shamus was like 70 or 80, and then suddenly I saw the blog post that you put up that had as title "The Late Shamus Young," and at first I thought, like, oh, Shamus is complaining about his health again, but then I saw that you posted it, and it did me quite hard at the time, because he had grown to be a very large part of my life, and was I was very sad when it all just changed.
Hmm.
As they say, you don't really know what you have until it's gone.
Hmm. Yeah, you wrote in a lot of questions to the diecast, both with the spoiler warning section and when I was coasting. There was a lot of stuff in there. It was always good to hear from you,
Yeah.
and James was always happy to read your questions. They were always interesting.
That's good to know. I tried my best to keep him a bit entertained with what I wrote in, and it was also nice to hear him happy when he was doing the diecast. Oftentimes, when he was doing that, especially when he was talking with you, there were these moments when I felt like that Shamus was very pleasantly engaged in the conversation, and I like to think that he had a very good time with those.
Yeah, it was a high point for me every week too. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Lino is in chat. He's saying, "Hi guys."
Hello.
Hi, Lino.
Hope you're having a good time.
Yeah. We're just getting started here. So that's introductions. You all know me from previous episodes, so I'm not going to introduce myself here. Let's talk about some specific things that you guys liked about Shamus's work, maybe specific, favorite stuff that he made or stuff like that. We've got Andrew's got a bunch of screencasts, but before we start on these, does anyone else have a specific article or series that he did that you wanted to talk about?
Well, the funny thing is, a lot of the material that James made that I liked was stuff that I disagreed with him on. Like, for example, I am not much of a fan of first-person shooters, and I was a very big fan of the Dark Souls series, or at least Dark Souls 1 and 2. But something that I really found interesting was when Shamus talked about Dark Souls 1 and about how he really didn't like the game because of it not really sitting well with his personality and how he liked to play. And I found it interesting that the problem that the Dark Souls fans had with him was like, oh, he just he's not getting good, so to speak, and he's not putting in all that effort. But then, like, you guys are pushing Shamus to play that series. You guys really, really want him to play that series, and then you don't want people to FromSoft to make it easy. Then, like, the biggest problem here is not anything about the games, but the biggest problem is that the fans just should leave others be. And I really found it interesting to read Shamus's views on the games because it's very different from how I experienced them. But I found that quite interesting, and to also read about how he would have liked to see them change.
Yeah, he had a lot to say about Dark Souls for not having played very much of them.
I think, was it in his at least one of his Dark Souls articles, didn't he go into how he had temper problems and he would destroy loads of he would buy loads of cheap keyboards and he would break because he would just break them if he played a really frustrating game.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't get a really expensive keyboard because he wouldn't want to waste the money, so he just kept buying cheap keyboards.
Yeah.
This is incredible because he didn't come off as such a person. I would have never thought Shamus in the fit of rage. Like, what?
It was very surprising to read that. I was he does not come across as an angry person. people say the same thing about me, where I remember so I relate to that, but I don't relate to the keyboard thing.
Yeah.
Because I was mostly not a keyboard PC gamer most of my life, so I would mainly be consoles, and I would break a couple controllers. But the difference between me and Seamus is I don't have really the option of like real super cheap controllers. Like if I break an
Oh.
Xbox controller, it's like at least 30 euro, probably like 40 to
Right.
60 euro.
Right.
And so I could only break a few of those before it's like I have to learn something else, because I can't, I can't just keep going this way and break controller after controller. I can't afford that.
Right.
Mm,
Right.
Yeah. I actually have ADHD, so I'm kind of impulsive and I get angry quick. But somehow I never like even considered like breaking something. It was for me so really really like I don't know what would have to happen, but we are all different, so.
I can't even remember. It's all a blind fog to me.
Wow. Okay.
Blind rage. But yeah, I also usually don't get that angry with games. But one time on a certain PS2 game, I got so angry that I actually did break my controller. It
Wow.
was Final Fantasy X, the Catcher Chocobo section, where you have to get under 0 seconds final time in a Chocobo race.
I don't know why that example is just particularly funny to me. I guess it's because it's tied to a chocobo. I don't know.
Yeah, if you've never seen someone play Catcher Chocobo to get the special weapon, it's infuriating.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I think Shamus at one point was really tired by like Dark Souls fan can be really toxic, and they will tell you to get good, or they will find some reasons to explain to you why you must like this game or something, and tell you to try to play for as long as you will finally start to like it. And Shamus finally made like a very very good, very articulate article where he explained all the reasons that he doesn't want to play and will never play Dark Souls, because it like enables this dark streak in him, this type of mechanics, and he gets aggravated and he just doesn't want to do this. And I think it was really.
He doesn't find fun. He just gets angry.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I
think
really
it was,
appreciate those artists.
Yeah.
I think it was connected to his love of teaching and instruction, and he felt like Dark Souls was not being generous in its instruction toward him, right? He was like, I want to learn how to play this game, and Dark Souls is like, no, you don't. I'm going to make you, run laps every time you get it wrong. And he was like, I don't want to run laps. I want to learn how to play your stupid game. And Dark Souls is like, it's not stupid. You're stupid. And Seamus is like, I'm not engaging with this conversation. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I really relate to his points about like. Now, I'm not saying it's bad game design either, but like just for me personally anyway, I really related to the idea of like, yeah, I understand the idea of like you get through all this stuff and then you figure, okay, this is where I die, and then I do this and I go through it, and then there's like such a huge gap between like your last checkpoint and then like a boss that you've never fought before, and then when you inevitably die to it and then you come back. And you're like, you have to go through all those other obstacles, like, and trek for who knows how long, and then you're like, wait, what was I doing against this boss again? And
exactly.
It's like the space, but for retrying to learn how to fight the boss was too wide for people like me and Seamus, basically.
You know what's I discussed this with the Dark Souls fan. You will never believe what was the argument of one guy. He told me that getting to the boss is the first stage of fighting the boss.
Yeah.
Checkmate.
Yeah.
Check. That's just it. That's just the end of the discussion. I win.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, like
right.
that's an interesting thing though, and it's like not to single out Dark Souls, the Dark Souls community, because there's like plenty of gamers that like fall into like the tunnel vision kind of mindset, right, where they just see how to play a game their way, and once they understand it. They're like, how can you not understand it? And they don't want to try and see things from like other people's shoes. Like, I don't want to like generalize, but like that's how a lot of like discussions, quote unquote discussions on the internet goes. But like with Dark Souls, like there just seems to be this quite like is oppressive the right word, where it's just
it's very harsh, right?
Dismissive might be the dismissive.
My joke is it's a game
like,
for
good is the meme. So it's
I'm
like
saying it's a game for masochists.
As someone who has actually gotten both of the special rings in Dark Souls 2, which the one requires you to play through the game without dying, the other one requires you to play the game without resting at the bonfire. I agree, it's a game for masochists.
I thought you were going to defend it, Tim.
No.
In the first Dark Souls game, there's actually a mechanic that makes the game much easier, but it is not possible for any sane person to figure it out. Basically, every time you beat a boss, you come back to your like a human form, because if you die, you're just like a hollow form, like you're just like you're like dead, you're like a zombie. You have like less health, so you would think that your objective should be to always be in this normal body form where you have more health.
Demon Souls, the light and dark world tendency.
Yeah, this too. And basically every time you died outside the hub, this nexus thing where you were safe, the tendency of the world would go to black and the game would be even more difficult. So what you needed to do after every time, if you beat the boss and became like a human again, you should come back to the hub and jump from the highest ledge to die. Because then you would become, then that world tendency would not would not change to the dark one, because you would die in the hub, so the game would not count it as a death, because it only counts the death outside this hub. So I had to remember that every time I beat a boss, I go back to the hub, I die. I jump, I like commit suicide. And that actually made the game easier, because if you tried to play as a human form, you would obviously eventually die, because it's Dark Souls, right? And then the game would get harder and harder. The more you died, the harder the game got. So the trick was to kill yourself in the hub. Like, who would ever figure this out?
Wow.
Yeah.
That does sound counterintuitive.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So that's it. And I just wanted to say, I remember that Shamus had this video, "Do It Again, Stupid." It was about GTA. So I think this is I think related to Dark Souls, because basically that's what he hated. A game forcing you to do the same thing all over again, the thing you already know well how to do, to get to the hard part, which is like a colossal waste of time, right?
And for the hard part not to be difficult because it was complex or challenging, but just hard because it was a random guessing game where you had to guess what the game developer wanted you to do.
Yeah, I understand the mindset of wanting to have clearer instruction and make it less a lot less abstract and ambiguous. Is like, what am I to do?
Yeah, because there are again people who love discovering it.
Sure.
And like don't mind having their time wasted by the game, because the game.
It's not wasted. They're playing the game. They want to be playing the game.
Yeah, it's not wasted. It's all part. It's an adventure. It's a very bright poppy adventure where you die a lot.
Yeah, but if I actually know what I'm talking about, because I actually played. I finished Dark Souls and I finished Bloodborne, and but there were parts where there was this hard boss, and to get to the boss you have to walk for like 2 minutes and fight, or at least avoid fights with people. And at one point it was just like mechanical. I knew by heart exactly where I have to jump, what I have to do, but still I had to do it every time. If I wanted to try to beat the boss, I had to spend 2 to 3 minutes to walk to get to the boss every time. So that's the game design.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, what would Shamus, did he ever talk about roguelikes? Because roguelikes, I think, are kind of this game that wastes a lot of your time, because you die and you lose progress.
I really am curious. I'd be very curious what he'd think of Hades, because Hades is probably my favorite video game ever.
It's a great game. But it doesn't make you feel like you're wasting your time because the runs are very random.
Yeah, very quick. Yeah.
Yeah, and quick and variable, whatever, varied.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a load of variation, which is one of the reasons. Like, it's exciting when you have to retry because every time you retry, you know it's not going to be like one-to-one repetitive or like close one-to-one repetitive. It's going to be, it can be very different because of like it has those orangey mechanics.
Yeah. And you get parts of the story every time. So.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things that impressed me the most about Hades was like how like I'd keep going through the game. Like I'd stop, like I'd be like 80, 90 hours into the game and I'd be going on like my umpteenth hundred run and then I'd get new dialogue and I'm like, what the hell? How is there still more story?
Yeah. So that would be really interesting to know what Shamus thought about it. But I think he really didn't care for roguelikes because I think we would remember his like opinions on it, right?
In the denouement for 2021, item number 5 is Neon Abyss, a roguelike. And he says in there, I have no idea how a roguelike got on my list of best games for the year. How did this happen? I hate these games, but here it is.
Yeah,
I had fun. I don't know why.
Wow.
I really wish he got to play Hades. I would have I think he would have loved it, even though he wouldn't. He has that attitude about roguelikes, you know. I think he probably would have liked it.
But Prey Moon Crash was roguelike, and I think Shamus, I really don't remember now. I would have to search, but I think Prey Moon Crash was the game that like made me interested in roguelikes, and then I started like tolerating them, and because it's a really great game. If you never played Prey Moon Crash, try it, because it's like it's a mix of immersive sim and a roguelike.
Yeah.
Really
I know he did play it. I don't remember what he thought about it. Let me look it up.
I think it's in denouement 2018. Yeah, it's on the second place.
There we go. Moon Crash.
Yeah.
He did like it. So there were a few roguelikes he liked, but it had to be connected. I think immersive sim was the thing that he was really interested in, and then if it was a roguelike on top of it, it was okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk about Mass Effect. He certainly did enough. Talk about it enough. Let's see. What was the other? There were some suggestions. Lena was making some suggestions about things we could talk about. Tarson's End. Let's go through these pictures here. We've got one of some Krogans doing a fist fight, and Shamus saying that really you should have not done this in a cut scene. You should have just made him like done it off screen or something. But like this terribly choreographed cut scene with Krogans punching each other.
There's a very good quote in there, like stylized minimalism is better than bad execution. So it's like,
right,
it's nice to be ambitious with a project, and like if you can achieve it, that's great. But like also try and like know your limits, right? And operate within them. Like push them if you can, but they're like Andromeda seemed like it was a mess of probably communication between the different departments. I think that was one of Shamus's theories, wasn't it?
Yeah, it not being well integrated, and the writer and the cinematographer and the engine developer and the game systems and all those things, like not talking to each other enough.
Yeah.
Or maybe not being directed well enough. Maybe like the game director really needs to be leading it as opposed to kind of.
I didn't hear it outside of. I think I heard it from like exclusively from Shamus reading his posts about Andromeda, was that they switched engines, but they also they had, and he explained how like they would have to like retrain the people they had if they didn't get in like new people who were already like experts in that engine,
right?
And that that takes up a lot of time and money and all the resources.
Yeah.
I remember when he was talking about Mass Effect 2 and about that he very much like Mass Effect 1, with it being more, Star Trek-y and having that very stylized film grain look, and that he didn't appreciate a bunch of changes that Mass Effect 2 made. And I really agreed with him on those points, because in fact I even went further than him. After I played Mass Effect 2, I decided not to get the third game, because I was like, no, the way this is going, I don't see it going well.
Wow.
And yeah, I agreed with many of his points about like how the final the special reaper at the end of Mass Effect 2, that's human shape, how that's just very, very stupid.
The humongous Terminator.
Yes. And yeah, Shamus also called that out as being just, absolutely nonsense when compared to what the first game did.
Yeah, the first game was very thinking man oriented, very analytical, and had interesting ideas, right? And the second was just like spectacle and nonsense.
Yeah. And the first game had weapons with infinite ammunition. You just have to manage the heat. And the second game's like, okay, now we've got bullets.
Yeah, but like what was really fascinating reading Shamus's thoughts on things like that was like he still tried to, like, even though like he admitted his personal, feelings about the changes, he still tried to like engage with the new the sequels on their new terms,
right?
And but like would still find like problems within looking at it through those lens, and that was like really fascinating. So I think he tried to explain. I can't remember what he said, if he said anything, but like I think he tried to come with a good reason for why the ammo change happened from a gameplay perspective, not an in-universe continuity perspective.
And he also gave the suggestion of, okay, you can keep the new heat sink system, but then if you're on the last heat sink, then fall back to the old behavior, but make it, very unoptimal in some way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, he was always looking out for ways to make the game better without changing it too much, right? Because it's easy to say like, oh, we'll just add an entire new area to the game. It's like, well, yeah, but there's a huge amount of work, and so he was always thinking about how can we make this better, but just by tweaking a little bit, right?
Yeah, he had a very reasonable mind for like ideas, if not demands, for change in like certain games, like hypotheticals, because the game's already out, obviously. So
right.
That was very refreshing, because like so often you see in like the gaming communities that like people just like blindly demand things, and they don't realize like how much time, how much money, how much effort like those things require in order to be done and to be done properly. And it was especially like extra layer for Shamus, because he's made his own games and he's programmed, so he has the extra insight to make like to try and bridge the people that are ignorant of that stuff and like they don't understand it. Like I think that's one of the things he was like trying to really do, was like to help spread awareness of those kind of things and like get people to try and put themselves in like the developer's shoes, basically.
Right. Where maybe someone who's just a businessman would be like, well, we'll just add another scene where they do this thing, and meanwhile it's like, well, our engine isn't set up to do that thing, and we need to get the voice actors back to add all the lines, and all these problems that would be like, instead of adding a new scene where they do the thing, why don't you just change this one line of dialogue or cut this line of dialogue out, right? And then the problem goes away entirely.
Oh yeah. It's like what was the terms he used was like, it's like storytelling economics or storytelling real estate. It's like you have your trade-offs, like you are paying all the costs of putting in X and getting like none of the benefits for it. So just take out X, and then you don't like, it's like all debt, like all costs no pay. So just don't put it in.
Yeah. Lino's commenting that his favorite part of the Andromeda retrospective was where he gave world building ideas where the game could have been more interesting, and that no one seems to be talking about that. Everyone talks. It's easy to say, oh, this part was boring or this part was dumb, but like Shamus always had suggestions for how to make it better. It wasn't just like putting it down. He was like, here's something that you could try, right? Something that would improve it.
Oh yeah, like if you scroll all the way down, I think I have like 2 screen caps to do with how he'd have. I don't know if they might be backwards, so they think they're backwards. So it's the second one and then the first one. I think that's to do with what was the Jaws race, the Angarans?
In Star Trek?
No, in Mass Effect Andromeda, the Angarans. I think Shamus. He went into his own idea of how to do the Angarans, basically, because like Andromeda, the Andromeda's was pretty strange and weak.
I put them up on the screen there so people can screen cap or read them, or you can go to Shamus's website. All this stuff is from the blog, and the blog is still active, so still alive.
I can't remember what exact part of Andromeda that's from, so if I knew what it was, I'd link it.
Yeah. He had some stuff to say about Star Wars. He was kind of a geek, a nerd. He's into nerd stuff.
I would have never
had
guessed.
stuff to say about anime.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
for a while back in the day, he kind of stopped talking about anime later. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate because when towards the later part, then I personally really got into the Lupin the Third anime, and I wanted to ask Shamus if he had seen it and if he had, what he thought about it, but that wasn't meant to be.
I love the Lupin movies, at least the Castle of Cagliostro, and I really also enjoyed. I think it was the 2019 one, Lupin the Third, the first. That was that was like a 3D one, I think.
Oh, that can be that one I haven't seen. I have seen the Lupin Zero half series. That's recent. That's the prequel to the series. But,
yeah, I did try the series, but like going back to part 1, like there's like very clear like audio clutter, and so that drives me insane. Because it's a very old anime, so going back to that day and like having all those blemishes in the audio, just like it's hard for me to ignore. So I might need a watch party to get through it.
Sorry, could we come back for a second to the Dark Souls discussion?
Oh yes.
Sure.
Because I found something really mind-blowing. Like, there's this because someone pointed out here that NetHack was on Shamus' top games list, which is original roguelike, and on the number 36 is Dark Souls. And Shamus says it's a masterwork of game design that sets out to create a very specific tone with a tightly enforced set of mechanics and executes it perfectly. At first, the game feels hard and unfair, but as you refine your skills, the game becomes reasonable. And if you stick with it long enough, you might even find the challenge to become trivial. And then at the end, he says, I find it too stressful to enjoy, but I admire the game for what it does anyway. So, wow, bravo.
Right.
That is amazing.
Right?
I that's very interesting to find. I never knew that one before.
Me too. I just found it now, but I just scrolled, on the link you provided.
I mean, it shows he's still what year was that from?
2014.
So yeah, he's still like really consistent about his attitude towards Dark Souls. He just like I think he concisely
just got tired.
captures it here.
I think he just got tired by people badgering him,
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Like
that's the same thing that happened when he made that joke about Linux.
Yeah. Oh man.
What happened? What was that?
When he made a joke that he was using Linux for a while after he had a problem with Windows, and then he made a joke like, "Oh, Linux is not very good because it doesn't do these things that Windows does," and it's the stupid things like when Windows suddenly goes down for a reboot because there's updates or something like that. and it's very tongue in cheek. But then people read it and they didn't understand that it was a joke, and then they started complaining to Shamus, and it's like, oh, guys, please, no.
Okay. Linux fans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize on behalf of all GNU/Linux users.
I think he even put like a screen capture of a Windows system with like all these toaster pop-ups like edited on top of each other. They're like this giant tree of toaster notifications, and he's like, "This is why doesn't Linux do this? There's something wrong with the operating system." And it's like, obviously this is a joke, guys, but people didn't understand.
Poe's law, Poe's law.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just put something in text, like even, no matter how careful you are with your words, someone will there's still that level of ambiguity in tone because it lacks literal voice, and so people are going to have their own interpretations.
Yeah, someone's always going to take it literally.
That's right.
It's not entirely the reader's fault, because anyone can have a bad day or be primed, be charged in some other way, but
sure.
It's
Yeah, and Shamus was so agreeable. Like he wanted people to understand him, and he cared about people learning the right lesson. And so I think he shied away from some topics like Star Wars and Dark Souls and talking about things that people were very passionate about, because he felt like he couldn't really convey the balanced perspective that he wanted to. That people were going to get too invested in it and take sides and start fighting with each other.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really admired him for.
Yeah, so here's the Linux versus Windows. Point number 1, Linux doesn't reboot often enough. Point number 2, Linux doesn't remind me about things. Yeah, that's the one here. Let me just pull this down. So,
like, who would ever take this seriously? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Linux doesn't ask me how my day was.
Linux doesn't boot up or shut down properly. It only takes a couple seconds instead of taking minutes at a time, right?
He should say that Linux doesn't display this. You can now safely turn off your computer.
Yeah, Linux doesn't have the genuine advantage of a product key.
Oh man!
Too bad that was made before Microsoft decided to put advertisements in the start menu.
Yeah.
That would have also been very funny.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, that was a good article. Right, and it's got 255 comments, and a bunch of them are... Now, of course, it's a little hard to tell, too, because it's possible that the comments were also made ironically, right?
But there's this guy who made a comment, it's like the third comment, and the guy who called himself Sarcasm Detector, made a comment, whoosh! So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. You have to be like the most blind Linux fanboy to not to take it as a real critique. Really.
Right.
Oh man. But I think now you should to be safe, you should just write it was a joke, really, to not have to...
What I see now with a bunch of people that get repeatedly misunderstood whenever they make a joke online is they'll just
/s?
Yes, exactly.
I love it. I use it. Yeah, /s. Sarcasm.
Yeah. And if anyone... the funny thing is I never actually see anyone get offended, how dare you condescend me. I obviously know that's a joke. Everyone, so it doesn't really seem to have a back, a side effect.
There are actually situations where I read something and I was prepared to get angry, and then I read the /s at the end, and I was like, oh, it's cool. He was joking. It helps.
So the thing I've been thinking about, especially when it comes to Twitter, is so people, they're so, and this comes back to, I think, sort of what a little bit of what we touched on before the stream, but you have your own subcultures and your bubbles, and you're all you have, I think you're in this space where it's you have your circle that's familiar with you, and you just casually make a lot of these jokes, and you do it so often that you forget when you try and do that outside of that circle
Exactly.
to like strangers that no one like that just opens you up to a whole lot of like people don't know who you are. You forget you haven't actually introduced yourself, so they don't know who you are, so they don't know this is a joke.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. Even sometimes you think you know someone well, and you think you can make that joke with them, and then you make it, and they don't understand it. Like, and you thought that they should. So that's also
Yeah.
sometimes happens.
Well, that's just the nature of humanity and
Exactly.
communication.
I think the internet is the worst method of communication ever, discovered. Really, like, like there's so much misunderstanding because of not hearing the voice, not seeing your face, the tone of your voice, your grimace, everything. Like it's horrible, really.
Yeah, you don't know me. I'm hiding a really sadistic slasher smile right now, and
That's why you get your camera turned off. I don't know if it's the worst, but there's certainly a lot more volume of communication, and so the volume of miscommunication goes up too. But the ratio might be worse online than in real life, though. I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
oh yeah.
So here's an article about plot holes and trusting the storyteller.
Yes.
This is another classic one. And he referred back to this several times. This is
It's
10 years ago.
It's one of my favorite posts from his because it's like, it's so concisely and excellently illustrates this like fundamental concept that just like a lot of people don't seem to be aware of. Right? Do we want to read it out? Because I think it's
Sure, let's do it. Plot Holes Part 1, Trust in the Storyteller. This is 20-sided tale, article 17692. About 2 months ago, we turned a critical eye toward the ending of Mass Effect 3. There we are again. And also criticized Film Crit Hulk for criticizing the critics of the Mass Effect 3 ending. Basically, it was a giant critique Ouroboros. You get it on the internet. Now, Hulk had written a follow-up post, Hulk versus Plot Holes in Movie Logic. Like a lot of Hulk's work, it isn't exactly some scrawny essay in plot holes. It's a hulked-out treatise that weighs in at about 12,000 words, and I do not say this to scare you off. I suggest reading it, but I'm also going to try to summarize it because I know how you are about reading long articles on the internet. Fair warning, summarizing something this large is unavoidably a lossy process. If FC Hulk points could have been made in 100 words, he wouldn't have written thousands. Moreover, I skipped stuff that talked about movies that I haven't seen yet, so understand that you're about to read a review of an article written by someone who hasn't read the original article in its entirety. But here it is. A movie, a video game, or a book does not exist to present a perfect, flawless, rigorously logical world, but to tell a particular story. If you're auditing a story for consistency, then you have missed the point of storytelling. Now, mind you, that's not the only thing Hulk had to say, but I think that this is a Tootsie Roll center of the thing. This is the bit where you bite down and it goes crunch, and that's what I took away from it at any rate. But really, you should read the entire article, etc., etc. It'll blow your mind. It's really fortunate this came up now because it fits perfectly with the long-form analysis / deconstruction / bit session that we're performing on the Mass Effect 3 right now. The kids call these things Let's Plays, although I'm sure our show is the only one that focuses on analysis, ludonarrative constructs, technical footnotes, and god-awful puns. Most people just make Mystery Science Theater jokes all around it all day. But to be fair, these shows are more popular than spoiler warning. The point is that our show has a bit of a reputation for focusing on and highlighting every tiny flaw in a story. And despite a reputation as world-class nitpickers, I agree with Hulk's thesis. And I think it's an important point to make. Gaps in logic are not an unforgivable sin, and they might even be unavoidable. Here's how FC Hulk defines a plot hole. A plot hole is actually a very simple thing, and here's Hulk's personal definition. It is where there is a crucial gap or inconsistency in a storyline as presented that prevents the proper functioning of the plot or central characterization as presented. And I really like this definition. The only downside is that almost nobody else uses or understands the term in this way. This is something that we really need a word for, and we don't really have one. We need a way to differentiate between something that maybe in retrospect could have been explained better as time allowed, and something that yanks you out of a story because it doesn't fit and makes no sense. We need a way to refer to plot holes that lets us make a distinction between fridge logic and show-stopping failure of reason and continuity. When there's a lapse of sense-making, is it something that you'd notice later, or while you're busy being absorbed in the story? Trust in the storyteller. Do you trust the writer? Do you believe they are playing by the rules that they have established? When something implausible happens, this creates tension. Not tension in the story, but tension in the viewer. How you resolve that tension depends on how much you trust the storyteller. Do you question the veracity of the story? Or do you question what you think you know about the world of the story? Did they make a mistake? Or are you not giving them enough credit? Heck, this doesn't even have to apply to just stories. It can apply to any kind of writing. And then he's got a picture with a lady holding a protest, holding a sign saying, "Increase school funding, your children deserve it." Only it's your, as in you are, children deserve it. And so then he says, "Is this woman a dummy who didn't proofread her sign? Or is she being clever by making an ironic statement about who needs schooling?" You can make the case either way, and it all boils down to whether or not you trust that she knows what she's doing. She's got some other sign there. If you saw that they were all deliberate ironic statements and jokes, then you'd probably give her the benefit of a doubt. But if the other signs were all played straight, then maybe you'd assume that she botched this one.
I have to highlight that part in particular. Just like really stood out to me as like that. Yes, that just makes so much more sense now that he's. That's like a perfect illustration of just that whole set of concepts, I think.
Yeah, it's so distilled down. He hit it. He hit the bullseye. He is always so good at like hitting the bullseye on an idea.
It's so simple. Like, you don't need a full fictional story to make this point. Just show this one image and like and you get it, right? Like you lack the context, and then he gives you the questions for how are you thinking about this? And then if you had these other things, would you still be thinking that way, or would you be thinking this other way? And it's like, he's not just like telling you what to think or you're wrong for thinking a certain way, right? Like, he's giving you fuel to do your own thinking, basically, which was also something I really appreciated reading his blog.
Yeah.
And it's a great example of Starship Troopers. Like, I also watched it. I had no idea. It's like the message of the film is war makes fascists of us all.
Mm.
Oh, no. But when you know it, and when you see that trench coat of the Doogie Howser character, it's like Gestapo. It's like Gestapo trench coat, 100%. But before you know it, it's just a trench coat, But or like whatever it's called, I don't know, like the
trench coat.
Isn't the art I haven't watched or read either, but isn't there different, like a significant difference between Starship Troopers the movie and the novel?
I think yes.
Yeah,
I think novel is actually pro-fascist and pro-war.
So then you kind of sort of raise the other question of like, which are you talking about?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, and then if the movie is making a comment on the tone of the book, right? Or is it making a comment on the character of the audience? It's kind of hard to tell. But again, it comes back to whether or not you trust that the person who's presenting this to you is presenting it in a skillful way and presenting it with an intentional message, right?
Yeah, because what's the idea? I think it just ties back to like this basic idea of like everyone makes mistakes, so you can forgive a couple, right? But like if a storyteller is like setting up their story and they're just continually making like these big sloppy mistakes, it's not exactly setting a good precedent to be that good faith in them, right? Like, even though you're gonna probably continue to want to, because if you're gonna continue with the story, then you're gonna probably hope that they're gonna get better. Like, that's I hear that about a bunch of stuff where people try to get you into an anime that they really like, and it's like hundreds of episodes long, and then you're like, oh, I tried it for like 3 episodes and it didn't do it for me. And they're like, no, it gets better like next episode, and then you try next episode, it doesn't get better. And then it's like, oh no, you gotta stick with it for 10 more episodes. And then this keeps going on and on. It's like, no, it gets better at like the 7th arc, like 130 episodes in or something. And it's like, okay. Maybe it does. Why would I stick around that long?
Yeah. Well, and it also is like trust in your friend who's recommending it, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
Do you actually know that this is good, or you just have like Stockholm syndrome at this point?
I definitely have Stockholm syndrome with a particular show we're going through.
No.
But this is the other interesting thing. I don't has Seamus done an article about the value of bad fiction? Do you know?
Not that I recall.
Or has he in private ever spoken to you about like if any of his inspirations for like his own creative works came from bad fiction? Like he was like frustrated with like a story concept that he thought was like really interesting, and it was just he didn't see it really done.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point that I think people have a misperception about. Seamus didn't really have private conversations with people.
Oh,
like he would be very professional before the show started and be like, all right, here's our show notes. We have everything in order. Everyone's got you've been to the bathroom and stuff, and we're ready to do this. And then we'd start the show, and then do the whole thing. And then once it was over, it was like, all right, well, thanks. I'll see you later. And he was gone, right? So there wasn't a lot of stuff off screen, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. He really wanted everything he did to be out there for his audience, right? He wanted to give them everything that he had. And so sometimes we would even start talking about something before the show, and he'd be like, no, let's save it for the show, because he wanted it all to be there for people. So
I mean that makes sense in a number of ways. It makes sense but besides what you said, but like it also makes sense in the idea of like you have kind of like energy in you, and especially when it comes to creative projects. If you vent it, like you say it to someone, like, I have all these great creative story ideas, and you like let it out and you tell them, then it kind of like diminishes your motivation to like do that again. But like, if you're writing a story, it's like actually finish the story, actually write the story. It's like you can tell people about all of these great ideas you have for a story, and then you do, and then you're like, it's off my back, I don't need to write it.
Yeah, I think that did happen to Shamus quite a bit. Like with Fall from the Sky, right? He got started on this thing, and then he like told a couple people about it, and he's like, I don't want to write it anymore. It's like, oh no, the inspiration's all gone.
And then the other thing too I understand about Shamus, especially after reading his like autobiography, was like he suffered a lot of like pain throughout his life. So like I think chronic pain, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine like how distracting to some degree, debilitating that it'd be, and you'd want to like be more economical with your time, probably maybe the average person or something.
Right.
Or your time and your energy.
I don't know if he wrote an article about bad fiction, but he certainly wasn't opposed to like lower quality expression of ideas. Like his first real book was a fan fiction. Was it Free Radical, based on the System Shock games, right?
I think I bought it, but I haven't read it yet, so I have a feel
shame.
Oh
wow! Oh, okay, yeah.
I think I bought it on Kindle, but I still haven't read it. So the only thing I think of, well, what was it? What did he call the Mass Effect book again? Mass Effect. I bought Mass Effect, and I think I bought Free Radical, and so I'd already read all of his Mass Effect retrospective on the blog, but then I bought the book because I just thought it was so great, and then I read it again.
Yeah.
And I read his autobiography as well. It's been quite a while, so I'm blanking on a bunch of things, but like that was quite a insightful look into his life. And I don't usually read autobiographies, so I don't know how common this is, but it did impress me that like despite all those like adversities he faced and everything, and like how prolific he was, he still managed to make his own autobiography and actually give it like a consistent theme.
Yeah.
Like tied to like really good points about the education system and like lifelong learning and all that.
Yeah. It was amazing how he could give it a through line, right? Through all these apparently disconnected events and things. It's like, well, they all happened to me, so they must have all had a common, like, what do they mean to me, and why does this experience keep coming up?
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you guys read The Other Kind of Life, but that was also like this. It was so evocative, so like tonally evocative. It was amazing.
I bought it, and I wish I'm really sorry it didn't like blow up. You know, it would be really cool if it blew up. But there's so many books now, like on Amazon everywhere. It's like with games, but even worse.
Right.
Oh God, I'm
Right?
It's a nightmare looking at my shelves right now.
Kindle.
I understand the how much it saves on space to get a Kindle, and I do have one, but I just much prefer holding a physical book if I want to read before bed.
Same here.
Wow.
Like I think the most recent one I've been getting through the Halo novels, and I really have been enjoying most of those, or at least most of the ones I've read. I haven't read that many, but they're some of my favorite books right now. And then I just tried reading, I think, Hunters in the Dark, and there's something about like the way it's written that just like put me off continuing it. I don't know what it is, but it's very different from the other Halo books, and I just didn't felt compelling to continue. And now I'm reading the Princess Bride, and I really love the movie, so I hope I enjoy the book.
It is a great book. And surprisingly not that different from the movie. The movie was a labor of love. But that's a kind of a different topic.
Yeah, I'd sorry to go on a tangent.
No, that's fine.
Good. I didn't even know the movie was based on a book. So. Oh, by the way, I remember I was really happy that Shamus loved Witcher 3, especially after the fact that he hated Witcher 1, and of course he had his reasons. But you know, I'm Polish. Witcher is like our legacy. You know?
Yeah.
It's part of your national anthem.
Yeah, well, not really, but yeah. But it's part of our identity. Like, Poles are really defensive of The Witcher, you know?
Interesting.
And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Isn't it like a big boon to the economy over there?
Well, I mean, it helped Polish video game industry really like, flourish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have now lots of... there are lots of Polish game devs who make good games.
Mm.
You know?
It started with the books. It was before even the games came out.
Yeah, there were books. There were books which were never almost. There was a series of books which were quite good in Poland. They got some awards. I think they got translated into other Slavic and Eastern European languages like Russian and others. And then I think the game helped the book become more popular, and it got translated into English. So if you like fantasy, that's not like it's more dark fantasy, but not like edgy, and really funny. But probably it's more funny for Poles because it has lots of references to Polish things. But I think it's still worth reading, The Witcher.
I've read a couple of them. I have all of them, and I still need to finish the series because my brother owns them, and he won't let me read the rest until he's read them, and he won't read them yet.
Oh no.
Kindle. I'm a Kindle fan. I mean, I love it, and
yes, I could, but like we have the books, and I want to read the physical.
Yeah. So yeah, they're really good books, you know, and the games. I mean, I know that the first game had its faults because it was like the first game of that studio, and it was made like on I don't know, sticks and chewing gum, like
right
at a very low budget. Like it really if you learned how it's a miracle it even like really it was that good. Considering
sure.
The budget and the obstacles and the inexperience of the people who made it, but I'm glad that with The Witcher 3 they made such a good game that even Shamus was able to like really love it.
I don't even know if he finish it.
I don't know.
I believe he did, but the big Witcher 3 series was written by Bob Case.
Oh.
But I remember Shamus praises.
Yeah.
The Witcher.
I love The Witcher 3. I still need to play the DLC.
Oh, yeah, do it. It's really good.
The thing is that they've been updating it a lot on Steam recently, and apparently, like, I've been catching a lot of videos where they're saying, like, it's kind of, like, breaking the game more than it's fixing it, and I'm hoping that the latest patch has really cleaned up a lot of things, so I can...
Because there are now two versions of The Witcher. There's the original version, and there's this like definitive edition, remastered edition, which has ray tracing and other things, and that one I think is more broken. but I'm not sure the saves are compatible. So it's really hard decision what to play. Whether you should play the original Witcher and miss like all the goodies, but on the other hand, it has more relaxed system requirements.
I think I heard one of the patches kind of like broke the save system for the older version, but they might have fixed it. I'm not sure.
Okay. But yeah, Witcher 3 was a good game.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite games, and so is Cyberpunk 2077, which I was also really happy Shamus praised.
Yeah.
I was so nice to see him. I think he had that in his denouement for, what was it?
Wow.
2021. His that post, and it was his #1 game for that year.
Okay.
And that was back when it was like still pretty messy. So I was really impressed that he was still able to like be so largely positive about the game. Like even though he played it in a pretty unglamorous, crashy state. I got to play it. I think I've had like the best experience out of anyone in the world with Cyberpunk 2077 because I get to play it on a really high-end PC at like max settings, and I hardly got any glitches it never crashed for me.
Nice.
Wow. I envy you because I started playing it also on a powerful PC after release, and I was really looking forward to it, and I had such a slew of bugs that I just stopped playing.
I need to make a clarification. I did not play it after release. I played it last November.
Okay, that's
Yay.
That's different. Yeah.
Wait for it to get all patched up, huh?
I learned that lesson, I think, myself, but like it's just been reinforced by like people like Ross Scott from Accursed Farms, was just like, just wait till like just so many games come out these days and they're not complete, they're very unpolished and they're very buggy on day one, and then you just are like, why would I buy it on day one then?
Yeah,
I'm just gonna wait, and then if I wait long enough, I won't even have to pay full price.
Exactly. It's basically the longer you wait, the less you pay and the better version of the game you get. It's like backwards. It should be the other way around, right?
Yeah.
I wonder how successful pre-ordering still is.
It is.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
That's
Gamers
why I
like-
only
gamers-
play games from the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, like early access is the new pre-order, right? And then you do get the game early and in kind of an incomplete state, but you get to play it longer. So it's like, well,
Yeah, like
There's a
early
trade-off.
access is better than pre-ordering in the sense that like I don't know if this is true for all early access, but like you do get to play a bit of the game, right? And so it's sort of like a
Hopefully.
demo.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
a slice.
yeah. It's like a paid demo. Man, that's a great deal for the devs, right?
Oh man, what an idea!
So yeah, Shamus is like you said in his 2021 denouement, he said, this is full of bugs and it's not what they promised and doesn't work. And let's see, even if you manage to overlook all of that, there's still the nagging thought that all this had come at a tragic price. The team was working heavy crunch for months on end to bring us this half-baked pile of broken promises. So if the game is such a mess, what is it doing at the top of my list? Here's the thing. This game made me feel emotions.
That is very rare for me as well.
Emotions other than anger.
Exactly.
Emotions other than smashing keyboards.
Yeah. The feeling of foolish optimism when starting a heist with my best buddy Jackie. The fear as everything unraveled. The frustration of trying to get Judy to stop being so bullheaded and let me look for Evelyn. Sense of dread when we realized how much danger Evelyn was in. The gut-wrenching confirmation of the chop shop basement. The burning outrage when I realized what Placid had done. The irritation with the childish Johnny Silverhand and his tedious politics. The pity as I realized that he was really going through and how the situation was unfair to both of us. The unease at meeting with the doll in the hotel. And don't even get me started on attending the funeral. So many games struggle to just present a coherent chain of cause and effect, and few manage to give us some characters with clear motivations. But Cyberpunk 2077, the characters punch through the noise and the tropes of video games and emerge as fleshed out people with vibrant personalities, relatable flaws, and understandable goals and dreams. These folks aren't just pretty good for a video game, they are condescending. They're the condescending half praise we give when games manage to not screw up the basics of characterization. These folks can stand with the best of them, from any medium.
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite. Yeah, I just as a fan of that game and like how successful it was on levels that was very rare for me to see in a video game. That paragraph especially just like really resonated with me. I actually wrote my own post. I don't want to chill, by the way, but if anyone is interested on Cyberpunk 2077. It does repeat a bunch of Shamus's sentiments, so I'm not going to pretend like he didn't influence it.
Here, I'll copy it into the chat here. Copy.
Yeah, I'll gladly read it on my Kindle.
I actually. Oh no.
Yes, I love it. You know, but like seriously, sorry, I'm shilling for Kindle, but I'm not being paid by Amazon.
We have an Amazon spy from Poland.
No. I just want to. I'm so happy with that purchase, and I already convinced so many people who were like then thankful to me for recommending Kindle to them that I wanted to shill it, because you can actually send the articles, the web pages, as articles to the Kindle and then read it in your spare time. You have to read it on your monitor, and I love this feature. Like I read Shamus, I read like half or more of Shamus like work of his blog posts. I actually read on my Kindle. So
wow.
Yeah. So that's even rated to Shamus. I managed to do that.
There you go. You tied it in.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like reading on screens. They prefer, on a monitor, they prefer it on paper or Kindle e-ink and something like that.
Yeah.
I think if I should probably invest in it, like the idea. I think you can get like whatchamacallit. There's like blue screen glasses essentially that diminish the kind of blue light you get from looking at screens, and like so it helps with like things like eye strain and stuff like that. It might be a worthwhile investment. Although I believe like Kindle, like especially the newer models, they probably have like built-in functions to help with that too.
Yeah, they don't actually emit blue light.
Oh.
At all. It's like a paper, but it's illuminated. But it's not illuminated like the normal screen, which illuminates it like from the bottom towards your eyes. But it's just it illuminates from the side. So the light, like the direction that the light like falls, is not into your eyes directly. And that's really the ebook readers which have this backlight. It shouldn't even be called backlight because it's like something different. But basically, what I mean, you can read in the dark. Like you don't have to you don't need like a night light or anything. You can just read it in the complete darkness, and the screen is illuminated, and your eyes don't get tired. It's really amazing.
Yeah, but can you feel paper?
Well, you can touch the screen, and the screen, it's not like a normal LCD screen. It's not completely like, what's the word?
Glossy.
Like smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It feels, maybe it doesn't feel like real paper, but it doesn't feel like a screen, like glass. It feels more textured. Because it's e-ink. It's called e-ink for a reason, because it's like ink. You have capsules.
I understand that there are a lot of probably better arguments to use a Kindle than books, like saving on paper, but I also
not blink trees.
But it's important that those trees die to give me a very important tactile experience.
It's all in your head, man. I mean, I read books too, but I I'm now I converted.
So Lino is asking about Sudoku. Do you guys remember that? He was making out like Sudoku game. I think he ran into problems with because it was all authored on his own homebrew code, like so it wasn't easily portable. He couldn't like release it to other platforms very easily, and then he had problems with he could run it just fine, but then other people deployment problems where other people had bugs or it wouldn't run or it would crash for them, and so he would have had to have rewritten the whole thing in Unity or some other like portable engine, and he just didn't have the heart for it. Right? It's like you were saying, where like you show someone something and it's like, oh, okay, I created this thing, and it's like, well, now I've released it, and so I don't have to work on it anymore, or I don't have the heart to work on it anymore. So I think that's what happened to it.
City, where he released it and didn't really know what to do with it. So it's like This is a screensaver, I guess.
You're right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I quite liked his programming posts. So that's like when I first really got into the blog, I was in university and I was doing Japanese studies.
Mm-hmm.
But like at my university, the usual joke was like, "Oh, people who are doing Japanese studies are just unemployed in training." And after university, then I took a course for learning Java programming, and I was inspired in part by Shamus's programming posts, like Pixels at the End, Project Frontier, and such.
Yeah.
Those are really good.
Yeah, it was really neat to have his the multiple perspectives on things where, like you're saying, he was interested in programming and he like inspired people to do programming, but he's also interested in stories and he inspired people to engage with creative writing, and he was interested in gameplay, and so he inspired people to work on games and procedural generation too. That was the main thing that I was attracted by, and so he inspired people to like engage with the procedural generation stuff and having computers make things instead of doing it all by hand.
He even made music.
Exactly. I want to say that. I love that, and I love the ending of Diecast. That music ending of Diecast. I loved it.
Yeah.
I never skipped it.
And that's something that he made himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, I even checked that Sudoku was approved for Steam Greenlight. It was supposed to come out on Steam, but it never did.
Right.
That's a bummer.
Right. Yeah. I think it was deployment problems were the main thing, that he couldn't get it to consistently work for a broad range of people, which is sad. But
yeah,
the code's still there. I think Heather said that she's interested in his surviving wife. I think she said that she's interested in maybe releasing it at some point, but hasn't happened yet. Well, we're getting a little close to the end of the stream here. I wanted to ask people, since Shamus loved to nitpick things, and I know you're saying, Tim, that it's not good to speak ill of the dead, but it's a tradition on this show to do a little nitpicking of Shamus. So let's all go around and say something about Shamus that maybe you think could have been improved. Let's start with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can I? Sorry.
Yeah.
I love Shamus rants, but sometimes he would like, when he criticized something, he would find all the possible. He had all the possible errors, like that for example I would never have. Like I had an experience of the same thing, and he would like. I would read his like rant on it, and I was like, "Well, this never happened to me." Like, I don't know if you know. No, I'm trying to like.
He would run into so many bugs that no one else experienced.
Like, he was the most. Yeah, exactly. He was like the most unfortunate person on earth. You know.
Right.
So, and I always thought, did he really had those errors, or did he like made it up for his narrative? You know, to prove his point. Like.
Yeah. You know, I think
there's so many of them.
I think maybe his game development stuff actually contributed to that, because he had so many different libraries and things in his computer, like code installed, that maybe they would get mixed up when the code was trying to call a library or something. It would call the wrong one because he had so many installed at once. And so I wonder if some of the errors didn't occur to other people, but they occurred to him because he had so much computer code there for the games to get hooked into, and they just got confused or something.
Possible.
That shouldn't happen, right? Because
I know it shouldn't, but it did happen to him, so it's weird. It's a weird thing.
The ghost in the computer.
Yeah.
I remember that he absolutely loved Steam at the beginning. Well, maybe it was bad then, but he had this article called "Steaming Pile of Filth" about Steam.
Yeah.
And he like this huge rant, like Steam is so bad, like
Yeah.
we don't want this. So yeah,
he also wrote an article about YouTube back in 2006, and he's like, YouTube, what's with this? People are just like sharing their videos. This is nonsense. This will never take off. No one's ever going to use this, right?
Oh man.
Like, bad call, man. You missed that one.
Yeah. Even Shamus got something wrong at the end.
Lino is saying in chat that something he really needed to improve was that he was terrible at marketing. He just could not do self-promotion.
Yes.
I feel for him because I can do it too.
Yeah,
I actually loved the fact that he never played the algorithm game. He would never do clickbait, things like that. I really loved it. That he was never he didn't play like this YouTube game, this algorithm game to get people attention by outrage, for example. He would never like bait people.
Was no one offering to do it for him, and was he refusing any requests that they do it even for free?
I don't know. I never. Oh no, I did. So I offered to do some animations for Good Robot, and I actually made a few videos of like fan animations for Good Robot, and I was like, hey, if you want, I'll like make whatever you want, right, for your game, promoting the game and stuff. And he was like, oh no, thanks. Like we've got it handled or something. Like I guess the team. Anyway, so he did turn me down on that one. So I don't know how many other people offered and he got turned down, but I was turned down once. So yeah, maybe it was happening like that where he wanted to do it all himself. He was too committed to the self-sufficiency thing where he had to wear every hat.
Yeah.
You keep your hands off my baby.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's probably a fair flaw to pick at him, and it's an understandable one. It's I think a very common one for a lot of creative types.
I read Paul. I read that you made some feedback. You gave feedback on his novels, and you said and you wrote that if it wasn't like a real obvious glaring technical error, he would just never introduce any feedback like into his work, like ever, right? So that really struck me as a really weird thing, because I'm, for example, very open to like feedback, and if people give me feedback and I see that they're right, I'm grateful to them and I made the changes. But it looks like Shamus was really resistant to that.
Yeah, well, and I don't know what all the because there were lots of people giving him feedback, so maybe it was like mine was like way off base from where he was trying to go, but yeah, I did have that experience where he was in his own work, right? He was very free to offer suggestions to other people on how they could improve their stuff, but then in my experience at least, when offered feedback on his novels and stuff, it was like, no thanks, no thanks. Like, okay, well. It's your project, but it was a little strange, yeah. I think maybe he didn't want to go back and change things. So like when he was writing articles series, if he read something in the comments on a later article, he would incorporate that feedback. But once he had written it, he didn't want to go back and change the thing, right? And once he'd written it and kind of released it, right? So maybe it was that feeling of like if he had gotten the feedback in real time while he was writing the book, then it would have been incorporated. But like once the book was written, he felt like I don't want to go back and like plow the ground again to change stuff. So that could have been it too.
I wonder if that I think he grew to have something similar on the blog, because I think earlier in the blog he do a bunch of edits, especially if like he was corrected in the comments or if he realized something later, right? Because you'd have those like edit text boxes in the section, like sometimes there'd be a bunch of them, but then I think that like just happened less and less over the years.
Yeah. And if it really needed to be addressed, you would address it in a later article instead of going back and changing the existing one.
Yeah.
What about you, Tim? What do you think? What could Shamus have done better? Nitpick Shamus for a second.
Well, if you want me to nitpick him, there was this little article he did about Neverwinter Nights 2, about how he doesn't like that you can't get into the Nobles District early, right? And I found that very amusing because, the basic premise of the story is that you are this dirt farmer from out in the swamp, and you and a couple of misfits made your way to Neverwinter, the big city, and a guy in the Nobles District has been murdered, and the Noble District is completely on lockdown. And then James is like, but why can't you just climb over the wall or something, or why can't you disguise yourself as a guard or stuff like that? And I'm like, you're a dirt peasant from out in the swamp, and the noble district is completely locked down because a noble has been murdered. Like, do you really think it's gonna be so easy for you to just sneak in? Like,
Right.
that was something that I thought, like, yeah, kind of got the ball there, buddy.
There you go. That's excellent nitpick.
So
That
you
just-
nitpicked at Shamus nitpicking.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
just
Mechanic-
reminded me. Sorry, that just reminded me of the plot door example he gave for, I think it was Borderlands 2, where it's like a barrier at the cliff edge, and it's like one of the most pointless barriers like in universe because you could just fly around the side.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things he highlighted. Like in game, you can't fly a vehicle. Well, no, you can. You can fly vehicles in Borderlands 2. You just can't do it in that section, I don't think.
Right.
Or I might be mistaken on that. It's been a while since I played Borderlands 2, but like it is funny that they do have flying vehicles in there that you could theoretically operate, and it's like that's the barrier they chose to keep the player from going down that path. Basically, you need to get Claptrap to help you open it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the only thing that's coming to my mind, unfortunately, I find so little to go off of memory to pick about Shamus. I'm sure there are a bunch of things, but I'm mostly in agreement with a lot of things, or I find him a very interesting confluence of a lot of concepts and perspectives. Is his, like, I think when it came to like comic books and like comic book media, in particular, he'd lean on, I think, maybe a bit too much on adaptation argument kind of excuses and reasonings for like kind of like nonsensical in-universe happenings or characterizations or things. So it's or he would maybe use that as like a criticism of a character. It's like, this character wouldn't be this way because that's not how they're generally perceived as in like most of the other media that they are presented in or whatever, or their source material, even like so. It's but then I was just re-listening to, I think, one of the Batman Arkham Origins Let's Plays he was doing, Ramble Pack, where I remember hearing him actually say that he would have been fine with that kind of a Batman, you know, if they didn't do X, Y, and Z in the context of the story. So I like, maybe he changed his view, or maybe he didn't quite have that solid or consistent of a view on that, and he was more, I'm not sure if the right word is hypocritical or, you know,
Inconsistent.
With the principle or the standard being applied there. But like, yeah, I felt like in his Spider-Man retrospective, at least, like, I think he was maybe leaning on adaptation argument a bit too much.
Yeah, he wasn't particularly well versed when it came to non-video game media. And so, like you're saying, he dabbled in anime a little bit, but he kind of lost interest there. And I know some of the other spoiler warning people were into like comic books a lot, and he was never really like, he would engage with the conversation, but he didn't really understand the other nerd cultures, I guess.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's like he'd say Aunt May is supposed to be a particular way, and you can't do her like another way, basically. It's like, why?
Because I say so.
You know, it's like, it's an adaptation, and adaptation has creative liberties that it can take. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying like he's like completely wrong about a lot of his criticisms of that game, by the way. Like, I really, like, even though I hadn't played the game, I was like really enjoying reading that for the most part, because like he had a lot of funny criticisms as well as like about the villains and stuff. But yeah, that's the closest I can come to a nitpick about him, at least right now.
I even found that part that Shamus said that he's horrible at multitasking. Like, so he even gave a great example that Heather, his wife, asked him that she left a cake in the oven and he should take it out in 20 minutes, and he would like acknowledge that he would do this while playing, and then he would completely forget about it, and like the cake would be a brick of carbon. So
I don't mean to, pick fault with past Shamus in that particular instance, but there are these things called timers, and they're very handy.
yeah, but it was like he was playing a video game then, right? And his wife was talking to him while he was playing, so his brain like just passively nodded, and he kept playing. Like,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he would have to stop playing.
you
I have the
always-
same.
Yeah, I do the same thing too.
Okay.
But it's not an excuse, right? You should stop, like you said. You should pause the game and stop playing and like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he even
It takes
said,
like what 10 seconds less to just go onto Google and enter like 20-minute timer.
and he said exactly what Paul said previously. This is why I don't stream. Because he said the Shamus Twitch stream would be just me playing mostly in silence. Once in a while, I'd say something like, "I like fighting these shit." Pause. These skeleton guys are interesting because shit. Hang on. 5 minutes of silence. So anyway, the skeleton guys are very interesting because, and
Yeah, I relate to that because I've been wanting to stream, but then I think but like, what would I say? Because if I'm playing a game for the first time, I want to pay attention to it, and I'm probably not going to be saying much. Like, it would have to be a very particular kind of game, and I'd probably need other people around to like talk about it while I'm playing it. One of the ideas I'm beating around is like the Danganronpa games, because I know a couple people that are familiar with them, and so I might get into those and see how that goes.
you just have to try. For example, I think that because of my ADHD or some other like gene malfunction, I can speak a lot. I'm very talkative. You can see now from this episode. So it helps because I can like play the game and talk all the time. I like talk and talk and talk. Like I never shut up. So that's like the opposite of Shamus. Like, it just comes out of my mouth.
Another thing that really showed Shamus is a problem with multitasking is he made an article or mentioned something about, I believe it was a Minecraft modpack Sky Odyssey, where he was like, "Oh, I got to build a fence because I almost fall down from my Sky Island. Oh, but now I'm seeing that this chicken needs to be somewhere else, so I'm gonna do that before placing the fence. Oh, but then I have to do this other thing, and I almost fall off my Sky Island because there's no fence." And yeah, that was quite fun.
Yeah, constantly distracted.
Oh, there's just if you guys don't mind, just a few more things, because I'm just so scant in what I can say bad about Shamus, but like there's still a bunch good I can say about him. Or
Go for it. Yeah.
Things interesting that he touched on, like storytelling values. That's a big one. I think he did this he's done it in a bunch of posts, but he was kind of like explicit in a couple of ones that he highlighted, I think, in the end of his Mass Effect retrospective. So he had like affirmation, explanation, and closure as like 3 examples he gave. And that just has made me, I think that's been like a huge prompt or influence for me, because I've been wanting to do this for a while, is to really try and devise like the perfect script or close to perfect script for a video that tries to tackle storytelling values and that kind of like foundational level for us to have like good understanding discussions about the media we engage with, because I think a lot of the time we talk past each other, or we don't, or like we misunderstand each other, or we assume things about like what we're talking about. We're not really thinking about it or trying to understand the person from like a base value level, right? Like a lot of people just assume, oh, they're an idiot because they don't think the way I do, but like I like this idea of building off of what Shamus has laid down here for, we go into stories, and sometimes or often it's to get affirmation or reaffirmation about like what we believe in. Like that's one of the things that we come to stories for. Another thing is like lessons to have. Like you can learn from stories. but like so many people just kind of, I think, again, I don't want to make sweeping generalizations, but like this is just what I see a lot, right? Is it's diluted down to just what you like or dislike, or if it's entertaining or not. And I think that's a very narrow and not a full picture kind of view of what like stories exist for and what you can get out of stories.
I think Shamus made us realize that you can nitpick, you can be critical of something and still enjoy it and still appreciate it.
Yes.
And you should give the benefit of the doubt to the creators, but not too much.
Right. And as a creator, realize that the amount of benefit that your audience will give you has a wide range, right? And so you have to have some variation there, where parts of the story are like very explicit about stuff, so that you keep the people who are a little bit skeptical with you. And then some parts are daring, so that you can kind of challenge the people who are invested in it.
Yeah.
I just pulled up his article that you were referring to about affirmation, explanation, and closure, and talking specifically about the end of Mass Effect 3 to bring it full circle. And how...
It all comes back.
Yeah. How the story, when you're ending a story, really has to address at least one of those things, right?
Yeah, I feel like I got to start reading Shamus' blog from the start, like, from the...
Yeah.
It's like years, but it's like a good... I think it would be a good, good what's the word?
Well spent.
Anyway, yeah, time was spent. Endeavor.
Worthy endeavor.
How do you guys think he'd feel about Mass Effect being so intrinsically tied to his legacy?
I think he realized it at the time that he had spent a lot of effort. It kind of pushed a lot of the buttons, right? It was this kind of open world game, had first person shooter aspect. It has an interesting world building. It had the connection to the engine itself, having some fascinating qualities about it. Like, it was doing some novel stuff with gameplay, and all those things. And then having a very expansive story that he could analyze, and also having a lot of flaws, but interesting flaws, not just like badly done, but like done in a weird way that could have been improved. And so I think a lot of it played to his strengths as a games analyst and a critiquer, a critic of the medium itself.
Yeah, he also, I think, nailed the what's the phrase? Nailed hit the nail on the head. I'm so bad, idiot.
Baccarat.
With the idea that like there are just so few games like Mass Effect that exist.
And Mass Effect 1 specifically, right?
Yeah, Mass Effect 1 specifically. But like even the sequels, I would say, like as like different as they got, they still carried a lot of the same stuff that the first game had, in a broad way anyway. That like you just don't get from a lot of other games. So like even though they're done like, to arguable quality, it's like, where else can you get games like Mass Effect? That's probably one of the reasons why, like, I think the deterioration of it for me and Shamus anyway, and a lot of other fans, just it was like so tragic and sad, because like we don't have that many other options, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the beautiful sentiments he had, especially about like the first game, was like, as flawed as even the first game is, it's still like a gem in this way, because like just like look at it, think about like the vacuum it's in.
It's rare. It's a rare thing. It's valuable because it's rare.
It's a great perspective that he shed there. And I really appreciate that one, because it's those kind of thoughts that he articulated that just really opens your eyes to the things that you were feeling, or like the kind of things that you felt similarly about, and you weren't consciously aware of, and like then he writes it, and then you're like, oh, you're right, that's why it was so special to me.
Yeah, the critique was his magnum opus, and I think that if that looking back, he was happy with it. I think that he personally will have felt that he really got the ideas that he wanted to convey, that he got them across.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved the way Shamus. I loved reading his content because he made great comparisons and analogies. What's the word? Analogies, right?
Mhm.
It's hard to make good analogies sometimes. He would make like those good analogies or some kind of made-up dialogues that would illustrate his point. Like some kind of similes or paraboles, metaphors. I love that. That he would try to make things more approachable, more to be more understandable by people, by various methods, and I love that. So we should all come back and start reading Shamus' blog from the start. It's like it will take us a few years, but it's worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
And we didn't even do a deep dive into his humor.
Oh yeah.
No,
That's for the
well,
next episode.
we can talk about it briefly.
I'm just looking at some of the images I posted in chat, like the one from I think this is the pre-sequel Borderlands game, where they have Athena, one of the characters you play as, is just inexplicably tied up, and is about to be shot by the supposed good guys, and he has in captions, "Let's subject this sympathetic character and former ally to interrogation by firing squad, and then execute her without even naming a crime, much less proving guilt. Remember, we're the good guys."
Yeah, he had a really dry, sarcastic kind of humor that I also liked.
Yeah.
That was so cathartic to me, because I was just like, what the hell is happening in this game? What? I thought Handsome Jack was supposed to be the villain, and then you give him a sympathetic backstory where the good guys we're siding with in the second game were actually the villains of his origin story, essentially.
Right.
It crosses the wires so badly.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, somewhat related, because we're going back to the Mass Effect. The caption where you're, I think, about to be made a Spectre in Mass Effect 1 was, "Remember, Shepard, Spectres represent an ideal. That power without oversight or accountability is pretty damn awesome." Just what a great subtle jab at, like, the baffling politics of the Intergalactic Council and the Mass Effect universe.
Yeah. Oh, man.
It's like, even a game he loved, he could make fun of. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's especially the things you love, right? You play with them and kind of poke at them, because they can take it.
I still do understand the perspective of, like, people can have their, like, sacred cows. Like, some media is just like, it's just so such an emotional attachment that it's like, it can be hard. I can get that.
But Shamus' humor was never like malicious, right? It was never like, would never like ridicule or mock. He would just like laugh at something, but with sympathy, I think.
Yeah, I never got that impression from him. It was always, I think he had a good playfulness about him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was playful.
I just brought up the screenshot that Tim put up here about, Tim made a comment on the blog quoting Shamus saying, "Programming in Python hardly qualifies me to provide advice to someone programming in C." And then Tim said, "Oh, so I guess you can't give me any pointers?" And Shamus responded, nods approvingly.
I'm
This
assuming
is
it's
the community I raised.
programmer's joke, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Even in the comments section, he had a good dry wit about him.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, he will be missed. So yeah, I agree. Let's all go and read some more of Shamus's work. It's all available. ShamusYoung.com/20sided tale.
For free.
For free. Forever, hopefully.
On Kindle.
We'll see.
On Kindle, don't forget that.
On Kindle.
Thank you. I see. No, I have my followers now.
Well, thank you, Tim, Andrew, Simplex, this is a great time. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. I've been having everyone on separately, or like different co-hosts every time, but maybe we'll get to where we can have some regular conversations about this kind of thing. But in the meantime, thank you all again, and thank you for listening. And go to ShamusYoung.com/20sided tale and read some of Shamus's stuff. He's got a ton of stuff up there. It's probably over 1 million words? It's got to be over 1 million words.
Holy moly.
Yep.
It's a lot of stuff. And all of it thought through, maybe not fully thought through, but most of it very, very thoroughly analyzed and well put together. So it'd be worth your time.
In the future, we'll have to dedicate an entire episode to nitpicking.
Yeah, I think Shamus made me more nitpicky than I was. He made me aware of some things that I would never even think of. I was unconscious, and then made me aware that these things can be picked at. And then I was like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why he did that? And
yeah.
I know we're gonna end the show, but I'm gonna throw in the Tim Island post as an example of that for me.
Oh yeah. Tim Island was a great one. It was about Mass Effect, but it was also about the idea of a contrived villain.
Yes, an extremely contrived villain.
Yeah, and it was almost like Cobra Commander kind of. He was like, what if Cobra Commander was in real life or whatever? And it's like, you can't actually have this secret island base that does everything. Where do you get the supplies? What do they eat, right?
Yeah. But Shamus, I think covered his grounds really well, because I think he also accounted for the idea that yes, there are some stories where you can apply the appropriate tone to a kind of nonsense as this, and it would work. But that's not the tone Mass Effect 2 or 3 are going for.
Right.
And it wasn't the tone Mass Effect 1 would have gone for anyway.
Right.
But yeah, that's just that's one of my favorite posts from him. I keep saying that, but
it's so much good stuff.
It's in probably my top 10 at least is Tim Island, because it's just layers of educating me on infrastructure and making me realize, oh, it's way worse than I realized.
Right.
Can you post it? Because I'm missing the context. In the chat, in the live chat, or on Discord.
Yeah,
somewhere.
let me see if I can pull it up.
I was patiently waiting for someone to post it, but thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. Great.
I also was Shamus the whatchamacallit, the originator of the name Tim for the Elusive Man, or was that just an obvious thing that people before him came to?
I don't know.
Because it is his initials. It's the Elusive Man, TIM.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, other Tim.
No problem.
I doubt you're an extremely contrived villain, so you have that going for you.
That's what you think.
All right. Well, and on that note, we're going to call it a day. Thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Well,
Bye.